Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching Sit Down. Justin Long is here with us. Lady of the Manor, his brand new movie coming out September 17th. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good, DJ, and I am sitting down. That was the instruction. Do
Well,
people
you're
ever,
on the sit down. You got to be sitting down. You can't be
do,
standing up.
do
It's a
people ever
little
stand up on the sit down? And
no,
you
we
tell
haven't
them,
haven't had it. You could be the first one to
oh,
pop up if
okay,
you want.
just say sit down. Sorry. You don't want that. That's a bad shot.
No,
You don't want
yeah, it's
that.
not. I mean, especially for you as a
Yeah,
director, writer, that
that's the
doesn't really.
comedy zone, though, DJ. That is the comedy zone. Yes, thank you for having me, DJ. We're so excited about. It's weird to say I'm excited to talk about the movie. It sounds very arrogant, but we are. We're eager for people to see it, and yeah. So thank you. Thanks for helping us.
You got it. So you wrote this one, you directed it, you got to work with your brother. And
Yeah.
I just love to know how you came up with it because it's a really crazy concept and a really interesting world. So what was it like putting it together?
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, it was so it's about Melanie Linsky plays a tour guide at this estate, this estate that gives where she pretends to be, she's like a reenactor. She pretends to be a lady who lived there in the 1870s. And but Melanie doesn't really have her life together, and she does a lot of, she's like a ne'er-do-well. And Judy Greer plays the ghost of the lady whom Melanie's portraying. And the ghost, Judy's character, takes offense at how Melanie's living her life and what she's doing in her old bedroom. And so she starts haunting her, but not in like a scary way, more in like an annoying way, like don't do that. So it's about a lady, like a proper Southern lady, having to teach this modern woman how to be a little bit more like a lady. And we came up with it just because God, well, we've always loved odd couple comedies. My brother and I, with whom I wrote it and directed it, we loved What About Bob and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And those were the movies that really inspired us growing up. And so Laurel and Hardy. And so we knew we wanted that as the structure, that like classic odd couple pairing. And we had an idea a couple of years earlier about, it was something that never came to fruition, but it was like a comedic psycho, basically. It was it was like if Norman Bates's mother, instead of being sinister and driving him to murder, if she was just like really overbearing and like interfering on dates and like, but was still in his life as a ghost. We thought that was sort of a funny idea. So we just kind of married those two ideas and came up with this. And but truly it's more of an odd couple comedy before it's anything. I mean, like the ghost stuff is, we wanted it to live as and work as an odd couple more than anything else. So people going in like wanting ghostly stuff and more supernatural might be disappointed because it's more of a buddy comedy.
Well, you're going to get a ton of laughs in there, that's for sure.
Oh,
What were some of the hardest parts to pull off of this movie when you think about it now, having already done it?
The hard stuff was it was just getting it together. I mean, once not to like shortchange what we did in the script or anything, but if you cast the right people, it made our job so much easier. You have Melanie Linsky and Judy Greer. You barely have to say anything to them to direct them. I mean, it's really just tweaking things here and there. And Louis Guzman and Ryan Phillippe, these are like actors who are really they're such grounded, they're such truthful performers. And because we had this script that was a little bit more, we wanted it to be commercial, so it's a little bit more broad, a little bit heightened. There's some fart jokes, some dick jokes, our parents are gonna be really proud. But so because there was that element, we wanted it to be done in as grounded a way as possible. I know that sounds weird, but with a ghost comedy, but we wanted it to feel real, and whenever I see a comedy where I see somebody trying to be funny, it always takes me out of it. It always, and again, our favorite movies were these movies that were the acting was always very, John Candy in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is it's like an Oscar-worthy performance. I mean, he's just like the brilliant actors. And so we were lucky enough to have those actors, and they brought to the movie so much more heart than we expected. Melanie Linsky's playing this character that does a lot of unlikable things, but she's the lead of the movie. And so it's necessary that you root for her, that you want her to succeed. And Melanie just has such like an innate charm. She's so likable inherently that she just brought that to it without it being on the page. And so truly, like, so much of the hard work was just getting it together, getting those actors together and getting the script, the money, all that together. but once we got on set with people like that, it was it was just kind of, it was hard not to laugh sometimes.
There's so many different moving parts to pulling off a movie, and you realize this, and you've been doing this whole thing for a minute now. I mean, when you think about your career taking a step back, I mean, what are you most proud of just in terms of the way that you've sustained this thing? Because, you know, it's not easy to do this thing, whether you're acting in the movie, directing it, writing it. What have been some of the keys for you?
Well, yeah, it's a good question, DJ. I don't know. I never had any real, I didn't have like super lofty ambitions. I never, the fact that I was in any movie ever was always, it was such a thrill right away that, like, for better or for worse, I think I ended up doing a lot of jobs just because they were presented to me and I had an opportunity to do them, rather than, I have friends who are a lot more choosy and stuff, and they were a lot more deliberate about what they did. And that's in no way, I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. It's just what I happen to do. I get excited and I'd want to do the next job. And I think that can kind of, you can saturate the landscape with your own performances, I think, and do too much. But I sometimes look back and think, maybe I could have been more deliberate about some of the choices, but I don't know. It's hard to have any kind of regrets, just because I feel so lucky to get to do this at all, and to still be doing it. And now there's a whole other aspect, a whole other creatively fulfilling part of this that I get to do in doing this movie, and working with my brother and friends like Melanie Linsky and Ryan, Judy. Those are friends of ours. Louis Guzman's an old friend. So I just feel very fortunate to get to keep doing it. I know a lot of people, their careers, actors, it can be tough at a certain point. And so I'm just very fortunate to keep working.
Well, you've had a lot of good ones along the way. Why don't we go back a little bit? Dodgeball was certainly one of the big ones for you. What do you remember when you were first starting that project? What was the anticipation when you got this role of Justin?
Oh man, well, this is going to sound nuts, but I remember my agents at the time were recommending that I do this other job because it was this kind of college movie that never really, I don't want to say what it is, but it kind of went straight to video, and it was kind of one of those movies, kind of forgettable. But I had been offered it, and the Dodgeball thing was not a concrete offer. And I had to make a decision this one day. I remember driving back from Florida, and the director, Rawson, who also wrote it, he had written the part for me, but the studio felt like I was too old to do the part, which they were right about. I was 24 at the time, and Justin was written as a 15-year-old. So I was too old for it, but Rawson had called the character Justin because it was very flattering. He had seen me in an episode of this TV show I was doing called Ed, and he wrote it for me, so that it was flattering, but it was also like, I talked to him about it, and he said, I can't guarantee this. It's just like, I'm pushing for this, but the studio doesn't, they have other ideas. So I ended up passing on the other movie in the hopes that this thing would work out. And I'm so glad. It's one of the few like really ballsy decisions I've made, and every once in a while I'll make like there's something compels me to just, say no or yes to something. And I'm so glad I did, because that movie really changed certainly my professional life, and I'm forever in Rawson's debt for that, and Stiller and Vince for embracing me the way they did in that world, in that comedy world. So I feel really lucky to have had that experience, and it was just fun. I mean, God, what a fun! I used to go to set just to watch Stiller do his thing, and those were heroes of mine, Ben and Vince, and those were like comedic icons, and those were guys that I really admired. So to get to be playing with them, to get to be like in the sandbox with them, was such a thrill, really.
And then you got to do your college movie and accepted, so it all worked out.
Right, exactly, which I was also too old for. I remember
you pulled it off. You're always able to pull off these roles.
Oh, good. Well, thanks, DJ. That's kind of you.
I think Accepted is a cool one because it has this, kind of cult-like feel to it. You're doing your thing in there. There's Lewis Black, Jonah Hill in a really funny role. What stands out the most when you think about that film?
It's funny because I was just thinking about this. We had Lewis Black on my brother and I do a podcast called Life is Short. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can listen. And Lewis was just our guest. He's our guest this week, actually, on the show. So there was a lot of reminiscing about that experience. And, it was a lot of, I remember feeling a lot of pressure because it was a studio movie. It was my first, I don't think like lead, whatever role. I just felt a lot of responsibility. And I remember I just loved working with Jonah. So I remember like I had met Jonah a couple months earlier, maybe on this TV show where he was a regular on. I was doing a part in an episode, and it was an all improv show. It was like, and he was just brilliant. He was like a force, he was this like comedic hurricane, and we became friends. And I asked the casting director if accepted if they'd see him, if they'd. And they said they would, and Jonah came in and auditioned, and I noticed he wasn't on the list for the callbacks, for the final round to play my friend. And I talked to the casting director. I said, "What's going on?" And he said he just wasn't right, and he referenced. It was weird. I don't want to say exactly what he said because it was kind of like whatever. It's not important. But so I called the head of the studio, I remember, and I said, "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have a favor. I don't know if like but if I do, if I get one as like the lead of a movie, I'm asking you to bring Jonah back in." Like the casting said he wasn't right, but I'm telling you, like, and so they did. He came in for the final round, and obviously everyone knows now how brilliant he is. And I remember when he left that audition, everybody was like, "Oh, well, he's definitely somewhere in the movie." So it was getting to work with my friend, and getting to work with really like Tom Shadyac is like a real inspiring figure in my life. And I remember it being just a really positive experience, and laughing a lot. We laughed a lot making that movie. And there was a cut, the one unfortunate thing about that movie is that there's an R-rated cut because we kind of thought it was going to be R-rated. And I think to have a truly authentic college experience in a movie, it's got to be R-rated. Yeah. And so that was kind of important to us, but we were doing PG-13 takes just to cover our asses, or our butts, just because the studio was like, well, we might want it to whatever. And they ended up only using the PG-13 cut. But I ran into an executive from Universal a couple years ago. Right? It was, about 2 years ago. And he said, "Man, that R-rated cut is out there. Like some people had seen it there and they were like, it's really funny." Because Jonah improvising, it's like 90% of his takes and his really funny lines are R-rated. I mean, he's got, that was a big part of those improvs, and so much of that movie relied on improv, and which is why we were lucky to have Jonah and guys like Adam Hirschman and Blake. And but I'm dying to see that R-rated cut.
We got to see that. We got to unearth that thing.
We should make it like a thing, like the Zack Snyder. It'll never take off. But
before I let you run, you grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut. I grew up in Westport. Can we get some favorite memories of growing up in Fairfield County?
We were just talking about this. So DJ would go to the Carvel ice cream shop that I used to work at on the Post Road. Shout out to all my, God, I had such a crush. I worked with a girl named Kate Vosberg, I remember, and she was like this cool older girl who lived in Westport, went to Staples. Memories of Westport were, it was fancy. I remember like my parents were always like, that's where all the fancy stuff is. That's like the good side of the tracks. And not that we lived on a bad side, but heyday, I remember. I just, it's funny to go back now because I live not far from there now, and it's built up a lot. It's just been built up. But I remember there was something really small town and nice about it. And I love living in that area. Feel really lucky to live there. But I have great memories from there. So shout out to Fairfield, Westport, Bridgeport. I loved it. I missed that Carvel too. It's a great Carvel.
It is a great spot.
I developed lactose intolerance there. I ate so much
every time in there.
Oh, constantly. I used to do a thing where I would drizzle, the like dip cones, the dip stuff. I would drizzle in the dip. I'd be mixing it, and I'd sprinkle in almonds, so it would like harden in like layers in that ice cream. And I would put some of the things in the cake, the little fudge. The crunchies, I would put that in. Oh man, it was so, and I'd like eat that for dinner. I miss it. I miss being able to eat like that.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for the time, man. Really appreciate it. Congrats on the film, and we'll definitely chat again down the road. All right.
I hope so. Thanks, DJ. Appreciate it.